Have you ever watched someone walk into a room and instantly command attention without saying a word, or witnessed a person diffuse a tense situation with just a few carefully chosen phrases? What if I told you this wasn't magic or some inborn talent, but a skill you could master? It was a Tuesday evening 7 years ago. I stood frozen at the edge of a networking event, clutching my drink like a life preserver, watching others effortlessly connect while I remained invisible. The successful entrepreneur I'd hoped to impress had just walked away mid-conversation, clearly bored by my rehearsed pitch. In that moment, I felt a crushing realization. I was socially blind. Despite years of academic achievements and professional certifications, I couldn't read a room. I couldn't connect authentically with another human being, and it was costing me everything that truly mattered. That night marked my awakening, the beginning of a journey that transformed not just my social capabilities, but my entire understanding of human behavior and success. What I discovered was both humbling and liberating. Social intelligence isn't just another skill. It's the master key that unlocks every door worth opening. The truth is, I'd been focusing on the wrong metrics my entire life. I believed that technical expertise and intellectual horsepower were the primary currencies of success. But reality told a different story. Around me, I watched as people with average technical skills but exceptional social intelligence raced ahead. They secured the promotions, built the thriving businesses, cultivated the meaningful relationships, and most importantly, they seemed genuinely fulfilled. Research confirms what I learned the hard way. A landmark study following graduates over 40 years found that EQ, emotional intelligence, predicted success more accurately than IQ or technical skills. Another study from Carnegie Institute revealed that even in technical fields, 85% of financial success comes from people skills, while only 15% comes from technical knowledge. The most painful part: no one had ever taught me this. 16 years of formal education, and not once had I received explicit training in the one skill that would determine the quality of my relationships, career trajectory, and ultimately, my happiness. We live in a world of hidden social cues, an invisible language being spoken all around us that most people never fully comprehend. Every interaction contains layers of meaning beneath the surface, subtle facial expressions that flash for microseconds, changes in vocal tone that signal internal states, body positioning that reveals true intentions. When you're socially blind, you're missing the majority of communication happening right in front of you. Think about your own experiences for a moment. How many opportunities have slipped through your fingers because you couldn't build rapport with the right person? How many relationships have suffered because you missed critical emotional signals? How many times have you walked away from an interaction feeling confused about what really happened? The cost of social blindness is immense, yet largely invisible until you develop the awareness to see it. It manifests as the promotion that went to someone less qualified but more connected. It's the romantic relationship that failed despite your best intentions. It's the lingering sense that others navigate social waters with an instinctive ease you can't seem to access. But here's what changed everything for me. Social intelligence isn't fixed. It's not something you're either born with or doomed to live without. It's a set of skills that can be understood, practiced, and mastered, often with dramatic results. After my awakening at that networking event, I became obsessed with understanding what separated the socially masterful from the socially blind. I studied neuroscience and psychology. I interviewed people with exceptional social skills. I worked with coaches and deliberately put myself in thousands of social situations specifically designed to develop my capabilities. The transformation wasn't immediate or easy. There were countless awkward interactions, misread situations, and painful feedback sessions. But gradually, the invisible became visible. I began to notice the subtle dance of social dynamics that had always surrounded me, but remained beyond my perception. I remember the first time I consciously recognized a micro-expression, that fleeting look of doubt that crossed a client's face when I made a specific claim, though they verbally agreed with everything I said. By addressing their unspoken concern, I turned a potential lost deal into a long-term partnership. It felt like a superpower, but it was simply a trained awareness of signals that had always been there. What makes some people seem like naturals at human connection? After years of research and personal experimentation, I've identified several key factors. First, many socially intelligent people grew up in environments that naturally fostered these skills: large families, cultural contexts that emphasized social harmony, or circumstances that required reading others accurately for survival or advancement. Second, truly socially intelligent individuals have developed heightened awareness, both of themselves and others. They notice their own emotional responses and can regulate them effectively. They pick up on subtle cues from others that most miss entirely. This awareness isn't magical, it's attentional. They've learned where to direct their focus in social situations. Third, these social naturals have accumulated vast reference libraries of human behavior patterns. They recognize sequences and can anticipate responses because they've seen similar situations unfold before. What looks like intuition is often pattern recognition operating at lightning speed. The good news: each of these capabilities can be deliberately developed. The pathways in your brain responsible for social perception and response are plastic. They physically change and strengthen with use. When you practice reading emotions, your brain literally rewires itself to become better at this critical skill. We now know that specialized cells called mirror neurons activate both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing that same action. These neurons are fundamental to empathy and social understanding. The more you consciously engage them, the stronger your natural capacity for connection becomes. This is why social skills practice creates actual physiological changes in your brain. You're not just learning techniques, you're developing neural hardware specifically designed for human connection. It's like upgrading your biological operating system. The social intelligence revolution happening right now is redefining success across every domain of human endeavor. Companies increasingly hire for EQ over IQ, recognizing that technical skills without people skills rarely translate to real-world impact. Relationship counselors focus more on emotional attunement than communication techniques. Even medical schools now screen for social capabilities, having discovered that empathetic doctors achieve better patient outcomes. Yet our educational systems remain decades behind this understanding. We continue graduating students with heads full of information but minimal training in how humans actually operate. The result is a peculiar kind of intelligence that can solve complex technical problems but struggles with the fundamentals of human connection. This mismatch has only grown more pronounced in the digital age. Technology has simultaneously connected and isolated us. We interact with more people than ever before, but often in shallow, transactional ways that don't exercise our deeper social capacities. The average teenager today spends 7.5 hours daily on screens, but less than 10 minutes in meaningful face-to-face conversation with parents. We're facing an epidemic of social atrophy just as these skills become most critical. When I share these realities with audiences, I often see a mixture of recognition and resignation. People intuitively understand what they're missing, but many believe it's too late to develop these capabilities. I'm just not a people person, they tell me. I was born this way. This is perhaps the most destructive myth about social intelligence, that it's a fixed trait rather than a learnable skill. Nothing could be further from the truth. Research in neuroplasticity has definitively proven that social capabilities remain malleable throughout life. One study of adults with social anxiety showed that targeted social skills training produced measurable changes in brain activity after just 8 weeks. Your social brain is designed for connection and growth. It contains untapped potential that, once activated, can transform every aspect of your personal and professional life. The neural machinery for reading emotions, building rapport, resolving conflicts, and influencing others is already installed in your hardware. It simply needs to be switched on and developed. I've now worked with thousands of people, from socially awkward engineers to isolated executives, from struggling salespeople to individuals on the autism spectrum. The consistent finding across all populations is that social intelligence can be dramatically improved through deliberate practice and awareness. The individuals who make the most progress share one characteristic: they believe change is possible. What exactly happens when you develop your social intelligence? First, you begin noticing subtle signals that previously flew beneath your radar. The slight tightening around someone's eyes that indicates stress despite their smile. The barely perceptible shift in vocal tone that signals disagreement despite verbal consent. The postural changes that reveal growing comfort or discomfort in your presence. As your awareness expands, your response repertoire grows accordingly. You develop the ability to adjust your communication in real time based on the feedback you're receiving. This creates a positive feedback loop. Others feel more understood by you, which increases their trust and openness, which provides you with even more accurate information to work with. Perhaps most significantly, you experience a fundamental shift in how you view social challenges. Situations that once seemed mysterious or threatening become readable and navigable. The unpredictable becomes predictable. The uncontrollable becomes influenceable. This growing sense of social efficacy reduces anxiety and increases confidence, which itself enhances your social performance. I'll never forget working with Michael, a brilliant software engineer whose technical genius was overshadowed by his inability to collaborate effectively with teammates. His frustration was palpable. He couldn't understand why people got emotional about technical decisions or why they didn't implement his obviously superior solutions. After 6 months of intensive social intelligence development, Michael didn't just improve his workplace relationships, he completely transformed his understanding of human behavior and his role in shaping it. I used to think people were irrational obstacles to efficiency, he told me. Now I see that addressing their emotional needs isn't separate from the work, it is the work. Michael's transformation illustrates a truth I've witnessed repeatedly. Developing social intelligence doesn't just change what you can do, it changes what you can see. It's like putting on glasses after a lifetime of blurred vision. The world hasn't changed, but your perception of it is fundamentally different. The science of rapport, that almost magical connection that forms between people who are in sync, reveals fascinating insights about our hardwired need for connection. When humans experience strong rapport, their physiological processes actually synchronize, heart rates align, breathing patterns harmonize, and brain activity shows matching patterns. We are quite literally wired to connect. This biological synchrony has evolutionary roots. Our ancestors survived by forming tight-knit social groups that could cooperate in hunting, gathering, defending territory, and raising young. Those who could quickly establish trust and coordinate with others had a significant survival advantage. The neural mechanisms that facilitated these connections weren't luxury features, they were essential survival tools. Today, we no longer hunt woolly mammoths together, But these ancient social circuits remain active and vital. They're the foundation for everything from effective leadership to romantic bonds, from successful negotiations to supportive friendships. When we deliberately activate and strengthen these circuits, we're not learning something new, we're reclaiming capabilities that have been fundamental to human experience for millennia. This understanding has profound implications for how we approach social development. We're not trying to acquire skills that are foreign to our nature. We're removing the barriers that prevent our natural social capabilities from flourishing. Often, these barriers are cognitive, limiting beliefs, misinterpretations, attention directed to the wrong signals. Sometimes they're emotional, fear, past rejection, or shame that inhibits authentic connection. The journey to social intelligence begins with recognizing these barriers in yourself. What stories have you been telling yourself about your social capabilities? What emotional responses have you been avoiding? What aspects of social interaction feel most mysterious or intimidating to you? As you progress through this program, you'll not only develop specific social skills, but also uncover and address these deeper barriers. This dual approach, building capabilities while removing obstacles, creates sustainable transformation rather than surface-level change. The awakening I experienced that Tuesday evening was painful but necessary. It marked the beginning of a journey from social blindness to social vision, from disconnection to meaningful engagement with others. The same journey is available to anyone willing to acknowledge their starting point and commit to the process of growth. In the sections that follow, we'll explore the foundations of social mastery, the core capabilities that underlie all effective human interaction. You'll learn not just techniques but principles, not just what to do but why it works. You'll develop both the conscious skills and the unconscious awareness that together constitute true social intelligence. This journey requires courage, the willingness to face your limitations honestly. It demands persistence. Social skills develop through consistent practice, not overnight transformation. And it calls for compassion, for yourself as you learn and grow, and for others as you recognize the universal human need for connection beneath our different expressions of it. The path to social intelligence is both deeply personal and universally human. No two people will navigate it exactly the same way, yet the underlying principles remain constant across personalities, cultures, and contexts. As unique as your social fingerprint may be, the fundamental dynamics of human connection transcend individual differences. The social blindness I confronted at that networking event isn't a personal failing, it's an educational gap. We aren't taught to see what's most important, but once you become aware of this hidden language, once you begin to notice the constant stream of social information flowing all around you, your perception permanently shifts. You can't unsee what you've learned to see. This expanded awareness is the foundation for everything that follows, before specific techniques, before strategic approaches to challenging situations, before the nuances of influence and persuasion. There must be accurate perception. You cannot effectively respond to what you cannot see. The journey from social blindness to social vision begins with a simple commitment to pay attention differently, to notice what you've been missing, to become curious about the subtle signals that reveal human experience beneath the surface of words and formal behaviors. This heightened attention will feel uncomfortable at first. Your brain is accustomed to filtering out much of this information to prevent overwhelm. But with practice, what once required conscious effort becomes automatic. The invisible becomes visible. The social world reveals its patterns and possibilities, and as your perception expands, something remarkable happens. Your presence itself becomes more powerful. People feel seen by you in ways they rarely experience. They sense your authentic attention and naturally respond with greater openness and trust. This creates opportunities for connection that were always present but previously inaccessible to you. This is the beginning of true social mastery, not manipulating others, but truly seeing them. Not performing techniques, but embodying awareness, not achieving status through artificial means, but creating genuine value through authentic connection. The principles and practices we'll explore together aren't about becoming someone you're not. They're about uncovering capabilities you've always possessed, but never fully developed. They're about removing the obstacles between you and your natural social potential. Whether you identify as an introvert or extrovert, whether you're analytically or emotionally oriented, whether you're currently comfortable in social settings or experience significant anxiety, the path forward begins with the same step: becoming aware of what you've been missing. The invisible conversation happening beneath the surface of every interaction is about to become visible to you, and once you can see it, you'll never again have to wonder what's really happening when humans connect, or why some connections thrive while others falter. The foundation of social intelligence isn't technique, it's perception, and your journey to expanded perception begins now. Now that we've explored the awakening, that crucial moment when we recognize the importance of social intelligence, let's build the framework that will transform your social capabilities forever. Think about the last time you walked away from an interaction feeling completely understood and valued. What exactly happened in that exchange? What made it different from the countless forgettable conversations that fill our days? Social mastery isn't random or magical. It's built on specific pillars that, once understood, can be deliberately strengthened. I call these the 4 pillars of social intelligence, and they form the foundation for everything else we'll explore together. The first pillar is self-awareness, the cornerstone upon which all other social skills must rest. Without understanding your own emotional landscape, you cannot possibly navigate the complex terrain of human interaction. Self-awareness means recognizing your emotional triggers, understanding your communication patterns, and honestly assessing your social strengths and blind spots. I learned this lesson painfully during my early attempts to improve my social skills. I would study techniques and strategies, then become frustrated when they didn't produce the results I wanted. What I failed to recognize was that my underlying anxiety was broadcasting itself through subtle signals: tension in my face, stiffness in my posture, a slightly elevated pitch in my voice. No technique could overcome the fundamental message my nervous system was sending: I'm uncomfortable and trying too hard. True self-awareness requires ruthless honesty. What emotions do you habitually avoid? When do you find yourself judging others? What situations trigger social anxiety for you? How do you typically respond when feeling insecure? The answers to these questions aren't weaknesses to hide from. They're valuable data that inform your growth journey. Developing self-awareness begins with simple observation. Throughout your day, pause periodically to notice your emotional state. What are you feeling right now? Where do you feel it in your body? What thoughts are accompanying this emotion? This practice of emotional labeling has been shown to activate the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for emotional regulation, and reduce activity in the amygdala, which drives fear responses. By creating this small space between stimulus and response, you gain the power to choose your reactions rather than being driven by unconscious patterns. This single shift transforms your social presence from reactive to responsive. The second pillar of social intelligence is social awareness, the ability to accurately read the emotional landscape around you. This means noticing not just what others say, but the wealth of information contained in how they say it. It means recognizing group dynamics, power structures, and the unspoken emotional currents that influence every human interaction. Most people miss the majority of this information. They focus exclusively on verbal content while remaining blind to tone, facial expressions, body language, and emotional subtext. Imagine trying to enjoy a rich symphony while only able to hear the percussion section. That's the equivalent of interacting while missing nonverbal communication. I remember coaching Sarah, a brilliant marketing executive, whose analytical mind was her greatest strength and limitation. She approached every conversation like a data exchange, focusing intently on the logical content while completely missing emotional signals. When team members expressed concerns through tone or facial expressions, she plowed ahead with her agenda, creating resentment she couldn't understand. Through deliberate practice, Sarah learned to divide her attention, keeping one part focused on content while another part scanned for emotional data. She developed the habit of periodically asking herself, "What's the emotional temperature here? What might this person be feeling, but not saying?" This simple practice transformed her effectiveness, not by changing her analytical strengths, but by complementing them with emotional awareness. You can develop this same capacity through structured observation. The next time you're in a meeting or social gathering, set an intention to notice emotional signals: who seems energized, who appears withdrawn, what changes in the emotional atmosphere when certain topics arise or particular people speak. This isn't about making judgments. It's about gathering information that most people miss entirely. The third pillar of social mastery is relationship management, the ability to build and maintain connections across different contexts and personalities. This includes establishing rapport, resolving conflicts, deepening trust, and navigating the inevitable challenges that arise in any relationship. Relationship management isn't about manipulating others or employing tactics to get what you want. It's about creating the conditions where genuine connection can flourish. It's about understanding the universal human needs that drive behavior: the need for recognition, autonomy, fairness, meaning, and belonging, and learning to address these needs authentically. Kevin, a sales director I worked with, transformed his team's performance not by teaching new closing techniques, but by focusing on relationship fundamentals. He trained his team to identify each prospect's primary relationship needs. Did they value efficiency above all? Were they seeking status and recognition? Did they prioritize security and risk reduction? By tailoring their approach to these core needs, conversions increased by 34% in just 3 months. The same principles apply in personal relationships. When you understand that your partner's criticism might stem from an unmet need for security, or your colleague's defensiveness might reflect a deep desire for respect, you can address the underlying need rather than reacting to the surface behavior. This shift from reactivity to understanding is what separates social masters from social amateurs. The fourth pillar of social intelligence is influence, the ethical ability to shape outcomes and inspire action in others. Influence isn't about dominating or controlling others. It's about creating alignment between different needs and perspectives. It's about communicating in ways that resonate with others' values and motivations. The most influential people aren't necessarily the loudest or most aggressive. They're those who have developed the capacity to build bridges between their objectives and others' needs. They understand that lasting influence comes not from pressure, but from genuine connection. I witnessed this distinction while consulting with 2 division leaders in the same organization. Michael led through authority and expertise, constantly asserting his superior knowledge and experience. Sandra led through connection and enrollment, taking time to understand each team member's motivations and linking departmental goals to personal aspirations. While Michael's team performed adequately when he was actively supervising, Sandra's team consistently exceeded targets, and showed remarkable initiative even in her absence. These 4 pillars, self-awareness, social awareness, relationship management, and influence, form the foundation of social intelligence. Each can be deliberately strengthened through specific practices and mindset shifts. As you develop these core capacities, your social effectiveness will improve across all contexts, from intimate relationships to professional environments, from one-on-one interactions to group dynamics. But knowing these pillars intellectually isn't enough. Social intelligence must be embodied to be effective. This brings us to the critical role of emotional intelligence in action. Emotions are the primary language of human connection. Before words existed, humans communicated through emotional expressions and body language. This primal system remains incredibly active today, operating largely beneath our conscious awareness, but powerfully influencing every interaction. Think about it. Have you ever disliked someone immediately upon meeting them, only to later struggle to explain why, or felt instantly comfortable with a stranger, despite knowing nothing about them? These rapid judgments aren't random. They're your emotional system processing dozens of subtle cues at lightning speed. Emotional intelligence in action means recognizing that beneath all behavior lie emotions, and beneath all emotions lie needs. When someone appears angry, there's often fear or hurt beneath that anger. When someone seems withdrawn, there might be shame or overwhelm driving that behavior. When you can recognize these emotional patterns in yourself and others, you gain access to the operating system of human behavior. I worked with James, a senior executive whose team feared his explosive anger. He believed his outbursts were justified responses to underperformance, but couldn't understand why his team became increasingly cautious and uncreative. Through our work together, James recognized that his anger was actually a secondary emotion. Beneath it was fear of failure and imposter syndrome. When he began addressing these primary emotions directly, his leadership transformed. His team no longer walked on eggshells, innovation flourished, and ironically, performance improved dramatically. Practical emotional intelligence begins with expanding your emotional vocabulary. Most people can identify only a handful of emotions: happy, sad, angry, scared. But human emotional experience is infinitely more nuanced. Are you frustrated or indignant? Anxious or apprehensive? Pleased or exhilarated? The more precisely you can label emotions, the more effectively you can work with them. Next comes the practice of emotional regulation, not suppressing emotions, but managing their expression appropriately. This doesn't mean hiding your authentic feelings. It means expressing them in ways that serve your relationships and goals, rather than undermining them. Sometimes this means delaying expression until a more appropriate moment. Sometimes it means finding more effective channels for the emotion. Rachel, a customer service manager, struggled with difficult clients until she developed a simple emotional regulation technique. When feeling triggered, she would silently name the emotion. This is frustration, and remind herself of her purpose. My goal is to solve this problem, not to be right. This tiny internal script created enough space to choose a thoughtful response rather than a reactive one. The final component of emotional intelligence in action is authentic expression. Many people, in their attempt to be professional or appropriate, cut themselves off from authentic emotional connection. They present polished but impersonal facades that make genuine rapport impossible. True emotional intelligence isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about expressing them appropriately. I remember coaching Michael, a financial advisor, who couldn't understand why clients weren't connecting with him despite his technical expertise. His presentations were flawless, but utterly devoid of emotional resonance. When he began incorporating authentic stories about why he personally cared about financial security, including his own family's struggles, his client engagement transformed. People weren't just buying his expertise, they were connecting with his humanity. This balance, being emotionally authentic while also emotionally appropriate, is the art at the heart of social mastery. It requires ongoing practice and refinement, but the results are worth the effort. When you can navigate the emotional dimension skillfully, you unlock levels of connection and influence that technique alone can never achieve. Now let's dive deeper into the most frequently overlooked aspect of social intelligence: nonverbal communication. The body speaks first in every interaction, broadcasting information before a single word is exchanged. Research confirms what skilled social observers have always known: nonverbal signals account for between 65% and 93% of the impact of any communication. Your words might be perfect, but if your body tells a different story, people will trust what they see over what they hear. This isn't surprising from an evolutionary perspective. Humans could lie with words, but the body was harder to control. Our ancestors' survival often depended on accurately reading others' intentions through nonverbal cues. Those who excelled at detecting deception or aggression before it became explicit had a significant advantage. We've inherited these same detection systems. They operate largely beneath conscious awareness, creating intuitive impressions like, "I don't trust him," or "she seems friendly," before we can articulate why. The socially intelligent person understands these systems and ensures their nonverbal communication aligns with their intended message. The most revealing nonverbal signals often appear in the face, particularly through micro-expressions, fleeting emotional displays that last for just 1/15th to 1/25th of a second. These brief expressions often reveal emotions people are trying to conceal, leaking through the cracks of conscious control. I remember analyzing video of negotiation sessions with a client who couldn't understand why deals kept falling through at the last minute. We identified a pattern: whenever the other party mentioned certain contract terms, my client displayed a momentary micro-expression of contempt, a slight one-sided lip curl that communicated disdain. This fraction of a second expression was poisoning relationships despite perfect verbal messaging. With awareness and practice, my client learned to notice when this emotion arose and address it directly rather than trying to suppress it, which only led to leakage. I notice I have some concerns about this particular term. Can we discuss alternatives? This authentic approach actually strengthened relationships rather than damaging them. Beyond the face, your posture and movement communicate volumes about your confidence, comfort level, and status. Expansive postures, taking up appropriate space, keeping your movements open and deliberate, signal confidence and warmth. Constrictive postures, making yourself small, with closed or protective positions, communicate insecurity or defensiveness. These postural signals aren't just expressions of inner states, they actually create them. The groundbreaking research on power posing demonstrates that adopting confident postures for just 2 minutes increases testosterone, dominance hormone, and decreases cortisol, stress hormone. Your body position literally changes your brain chemistry and consequently your social performance. Spatial dynamics, how you position yourself relative to others, also carries significant meaning. Standing too close feels invasive in most Western contexts, but might be completely appropriate in Middle Eastern cultures. Positioning yourself at the head of a table assumes leadership, while sitting alongside communicates collaboration. These subtle choices shape how others perceive and respond to you. Cultural variations add another layer of complexity to body language. While some expressions like the basic emotions of happiness, sadness, fear, anger, disgust, and surprise appear universal across cultures, Many nonverbal signals vary significantly. The thumbs-up gesture communicates approval in American culture, but is highly offensive in parts of the Middle East. Direct eye contact shows attentiveness in Western contexts, but may communicate aggression or disrespect in some Asian cultures. Social intelligence means developing awareness of these variations rather than assuming universal meanings. When interacting across cultures, the socially intelligent approach combines careful observation with humble inquiry rather than rigid application of familiar norms. Beyond body language lies another critical dimension of nonverbal communication, paralinguistics, how you say what you say. This includes vocal tone, pace, volume, pitch, and the strategic use of silence. Research consistently shows that when verbal content contradicts vocal tone, listeners believe the tone, not the words. Consider how the simple phrase, "That's interesting," can communicate genuine fascination, sarcastic dismissal, surprised disbelief, or lukewarm acknowledgement, depending entirely on how it's delivered. The socially intelligent communicator ensures their paralinguistic signals align with their intended message. Vocal tonality particularly impacts how others perceive your confidence and credibility. Upward inflections at the ends of statements, sometimes called uptalk, make declarations sound like questions, potentially undermining your authority. Vocal fry may be perceived as disinterested or unmotivated. These patterns aren't inherently wrong, but being aware of their impact allows you to make conscious choices about your vocal presentation. Pace significantly affects how others process and respond to your communication. Speaking too quickly can overwhelm listeners and create the impression you're nervous or trying to prevent interruption. Speaking too slowly might signal condescension or uncertainty. The optimal pace varies by context. Presentations typically benefit from a slightly slower pace with strategic pauses, while casual conversations allow for more natural variation. Perhaps the most underutilized paralinguistic tool is silence. Most people are deeply uncomfortable with conversational pauses, rushing to fill any gap with words. Yet strategic silence serves multiple powerful functions. It creates space for reflection, builds anticipation, emphasizes important points, and often prompts others to elaborate beyond their initial responses. I coached a sales executive who transformed his closing ratio by implementing a simple practice. After asking for the sale, he would remain completely silent until the prospect responded, regardless of how uncomfortable it felt. This single adjustment increased his success rate by 28% because it prevented him from undermining his position and gave clients space to make decisions without pressure. These vocal charisma practices can be developed through conscious attention and deliberate exercise. Recording yourself in conversation or presentation provides valuable feedback on your patterns. Working with specific exercises to vary tone, pace, and expression builds greater range and control. Even reading children's books aloud, with their natural invitation to expressive delivery, can dramatically improve your vocal presence. What makes these nonverbal dimensions so powerful is their authenticity signal. While words can be carefully crafted and controlled, nonverbal communication typically reflects your genuine internal state. When your words align with your body language and vocal tonality, you create congruence, a powerful signal of trustworthiness. When these elements contradict each other, you generate cognitive dissonance, triggering distrust and discomfort in others. This brings us to a crucial principle of social intelligence. Effectiveness comes from integration rather than performance. Many approaches to social skills focus on techniques and tactics, memorized phrases, rehearsed gestures, prescribed formulas for interaction. but treating social interaction as a performance to be executed rather than a connection to be experienced creates precisely the awkwardness and inauthenticity people hope to avoid. True social mastery comes from integration, aligning your inner state with your outer expression. This doesn't mean you must feel completely confident before acting confidently. It means acknowledging your actual feelings while choosing behaviors that serve your intentions. It means developing genuine curiosity about others rather than pretending interest. It means expanding your emotional range and expressive capabilities rather than putting on a false persona. I witnessed this distinction while working with two politicians preparing for public debates. The first approached preparation by memorizing talking points and practicing facial expressions in the mirror. The second focused on deeply understanding the issues and genuinely connecting with why they mattered to constituents. During the actual debate, the first appeared wooden and inauthentic despite flawless delivery. The second connected powerfully with the audience despite occasional verbal stumbles. Integration trumped performance. This principle explains why some people can violate rules of body language yet still create powerful connections. Their internal congruence, the alignment between intention and expression, creates trust that transcends technical perfection. This isn't an excuse to ignore fundamentals, but a reminder that technique serves connection rather than replacing it. As you develop your social intelligence, focus first on awareness and integration rather than performance and technique. Notice your actual feelings in social situations. Observe how your body expresses your internal state. Pay attention to the impact of your natural communication patterns. This foundation of self-awareness creates the platform for authentic growth. With this foundation established, specific skill development becomes much more effective. You can expand your expressive range, develop new communication capabilities, and refine your social approach, not by applying external techniques, but by growing your authentic capacity for connection. This integration-focused approach addresses the most common concern I hear from people developing their social intelligence. Won't this make me manipulative? The answer is clear. Manipulation occurs when you attempt to control others through inauthentic means for self-serving ends. Social intelligence, properly understood, is about creating genuine connection and mutual benefit through expanded awareness and capability. Internal state. When your words align with your body language and vocal tonality, you create congruence, a powerful signal of trustworthiness. When these elements contradict each other, you generate cognitive dissonance, triggering distrust and discomfort in others. This brings us to a crucial principle of social intelligence. Effectiveness comes from integration rather than performance. Many approaches to social skills focus on techniques and tactics, memorized phrases, rehearsed gestures, prescribed formulas for interaction. But treating social interaction as a performance to be executed rather than a connection to be experienced creates precisely the awkwardness and inauthenticity people hope to avoid. True social mastery comes from integration, aligning your inner state with your outer expression. This doesn't mean you must feel completely confident before acting confidently. It means acknowledging your actual feelings while choosing behaviors that serve your intentions. It means developing genuine curiosity about others rather than pretending interest. It means expanding your emotional range and expressive capabilities rather than putting on a false persona. I witnessed this distinction while working with two politicians preparing for public debates. The first approached preparation by memorizing talking points and practicing facial expressions in the mirror. The second focused on deeply understanding the issues and genuinely connecting with why they mattered to constituents. During the actual debate, The first appeared wooden and inauthentic despite flawless delivery. The second connected powerfully with the audience despite occasional verbal stumbles. Integration trumped performance. This principle explains why some people can violate rules of body language yet still create powerful connections. Their internal congruence. The alignment between intention and expression creates trust that transcends technical perfection. This isn't an excuse to ignore fundamentals, but a reminder that technique serves connection rather than replacing it. As you develop your social intelligence, focus first on awareness and integration rather than performance and technique. Notice your actual feelings in social situations. Observe how your body expresses your internal state. Pay attention to the impact of your natural communication patterns. This foundation of self-awareness creates the platform for authentic growth. With this foundation established, specific skill development becomes much more effective. You can expand your expressive range, develop new communication capabilities, and refine your social approach, not by applying external techniques, but by growing your authentic capacity for connection. This integration-focused approach addresses the most common concern I hear from people developing their social intelligence. Won't this make me manipulative? The answer is clear. Manipulation occurs when you attempt to control others through inauthentic means for self-serving ends. Social intelligence, properly understood, is about creating genuine connection and mutual benefit through expanded awareness and capability. Human connection. Why do certain people instantly click while others never seem to find common ground? What invisible forces create trust between strangers or erode it between long-time associates? How can you consistently create the conditions for authentic connection? What was your gut reaction the last time you met someone new? Did you find yourself drawn to them or subtly pulling away? That instinctive response wasn't random. It was your social brain performing thousands of calculations beneath your conscious awareness, analyzing everything from facial symmetry to vocal patterns, from posture to proximity. All of this happens in roughly 7 seconds, the time frame in which first impressions solidify. The science of first impressions reveals something both liberating and sobering. These initial judgments occur primarily in the limbic system, the emotional center of our brain, rather than the neocortex, where rational thought takes place. This explains why first impressions feel more like intuitive knowledge than conscious assessment. It also explains why they can be so resistant to revision. They're encoded as emotional truth rather than intellectual opinion. Research from Princeton University found that people make judgments about competence, trustworthiness, likability, and aggression within 1/10 of a second of seeing someone's face. These snap judgments significantly influence how we interpret everything that follows. If someone's first impression of you is untrustworthy, they'll likely interpret your ambiguous behaviors as confirming that judgment while discounting contradictory evidence. This might seem discouraging. After all, how can you control something that happens so quickly and unconsciously? The answer lies in understanding the psychological triggers that create positive first impressions. These aren't manipulative techniques, but principles aligned with how our social brains naturally function. The first trigger is congruence, the alignment between your verbal and nonverbal communication. When your words, tone, facial expressions, and body language all tell the same story, you create an impression of authenticity and trustworthiness. Incongruence, even subtle, triggers the brain's threat detection system, creating unease or suspicion. I worked with Thomas, a pharmaceutical sales representative who couldn't understand why physicians seemed resistant despite his perfect product knowledge. Video analysis revealed the problem. While discussing patient benefits, his eyes would momentarily dart down and to the side, a pattern often associated with internal conflict. This split-second incongruence was undermining everything else he did right. Once he addressed the underlying belief causing this pattern, his private concern about side effects, his congruence was restored, and his results dramatically improved. The second psychological trigger is warmth, competence, balance. Harvard research shows that people quickly assess others along two primary dimensions: warmth, how friendly, trustworthy, and well-intentioned you seem, and competence, how capable, intelligent, and skilled you appear. While both matter, warmth judgments typically precede and influence competence assessments. Someone perceived as warm but less competent might be liked but not respected, while someone seen as competent but cold might be respected but not trusted. The ideal first impression conveys both qualities simultaneously. This doesn't require extraordinary social skills. Often simple awareness creates the shift. Making appropriate eye contact, offering a genuine smile, and demonstrating attentive listening establish warmth, while well-organized thoughts, relevant knowledge, and poised delivery signal competence. The third trigger that shapes first impressions is synchrony, the subtle matching of energy levels, speaking pace, vocabulary complexity, and even breathing patterns. When you unconsciously align these elements with the other person, you trigger neural mirroring that creates a sense of familiarity and comfort. This doesn't mean mimicking the other person, that feels artificial and often backfires, but rather finding natural points of alignment. I recall coaching Alexandra, an executive whose team described her as intimidating, despite her best intentions. The core issue was a synchrony mismatch. She entered every interaction with high energy and rapid speech, creating a jarring contrast with her typically more measured team members. By simply taking a breath and observing the existing energy in the room before launching in, she was able to create greater synchrony and consequently stronger connections. Beyond these initial triggers lies the challenge of overcoming negative first impressions. While difficult, research shows it's possible through consistent counter-evidence over time. The key word is consistent. A single contradictory experience won't override the established pattern. You need multiple interactions that clearly demonstrate qualities opposite to the negative impression. This explains why reputational damage can be so difficult to repair. It's not enough to have one positive interaction after a series of negative ones. You need to establish a new pattern strong enough to override the emotional encoding of the original impression. Understanding this principle helps set realistic expectations for relationship repair and explains why sustained effort is necessary. Creating a magnetic presence isn't about being the loudest or most dominant person in the room. It's about creating psychological safety and genuine connection. It's about being present in a way that allows others to feel seen and valued. This presence isn't a performance. It's a state of being that results from the integration of self-awareness, social awareness, and authentic expression. Once that critical first impression is established, the depth of connection you create depends largely on one fundamental skill that most people never truly develop: deep listening. I'm not talking about simply staying quiet while someone else speaks. I'm talking about a radical form of attention that transforms relationships and unlocks information invisible to most observers. What percentage of your conversations would you say involve truly deep listening? For most people, the honest answer is less than 10%. We spend most interactions in one of two states, either waiting for our turn to speak or mentally formulating our response while the other person is still talking. Neither state allows for the presence required for genuine connection. There are three distinct levels of listening, each with different impacts on relationship quality. Level 1 is internal listening, where your primary focus remains on your own thoughts, needs, and perspectives, even while someone else is speaking. This manifests as interrupting, quickly shifting topics back to yourself, or visibly waiting for a chance to speak. While sometimes necessary for transactional exchanges, this level creates minimal connection. Level 2 is focused listening, where you direct your full attention to understanding the other person's words and explicit meaning. You ask clarifying questions, maintain good eye contact, and genuinely try to grasp their point. This level creates respect and clarity, but still misses deeper connection opportunities. Level 3 is what I call empathic listening, where you tune in not just to words but to the emotions, values, and unspoken needs beneath them. At this level, you're aware of tone, facial expressions, and body language. You notice what energizes the speaker or causes them to withdraw. You sense the underlying meaning that might not be explicitly stated. This level creates profound connection and reveals information invisible to level 1 or 2 listeners. I witnessed the power of this distinction while working with married couples in communication workshops. Spouses who had talked for decades without feeling understood experienced breakthrough moments when their partners finally listened at level 3. The difference wasn't more talking, it was a different quality of listening that allowed them to feel truly seen. The neuroscience behind this experience is fascinating. When someone listens to us at level 3, our brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone associated with trust and connection. This chemical response creates a physiological sense of safety that allows for greater openness and vulnerability, which in turn deepens the connection further, creating a positive cycle. Developing level 3 listening begins with a simple but challenging shift, temporarily setting aside your own agenda to become genuinely curious about the other person's experience. This doesn't mean you abandon your own needs or perspectives permanently, just that you create a space where the other person can fully express before bringing your viewpoint into the conversation. Powerful questions unlock this deeper level of listening and sharing. Unlike ordinary questions that seek information, powerful questions open new possibilities, challenge assumptions, or reveal underlying values. Questions like "What matters most to you about this?" or "How has this shaped your perspective?" invite reflection rather than mere reporting. The most valuable questions often come from genuine curiosity rather than predetermined formulas. When something doesn't make sense in someone's story, get curious rather than judgmental. When you notice emotional shifts as certain topics arise, gently explore rather than ignore. These authentic inquiries typically yield far more insight than standard interrogation. I remember coaching Robert, a manager struggling with a difficult team member. Rather than offering techniques for handling the employee, I suggested Robert approach their next conversation with genuine curiosity about the person's experience. The simple question, "What would make your work more meaningful?" led to a revelation. The employee felt his technical expertise was being wasted on routine tasks. This insight, missed through years of level 1 and 2 conversations, allowed them to restructure responsibilities in a way that benefited everyone. Deep listening creates the conditions for authentic sharing, but the connection this creates can only flourish if supported by another essential quality: empathy. While often discussed as a single trait, empathy actually comprises distinct capabilities that can be independently developed. The first type is cognitive empathy, the ability to intellectually understand another person's perspective, even when it differs from your own. This doesn't require emotional agreement, just the capacity to see how someone else's experiences, values, and assumptions might lead to a different viewpoint. Cognitive empathy allows you to comprehend why people behave as they do, even when their actions seem foreign to your own instincts. Developing cognitive empathy begins with perspective-taking exercises. When faced with behavior you don't understand, ask yourself, what would have to be true for this person for their actions to make perfect sense to them? This question bypasses judgment to find the internal logic driving their choices. The second type is emotional empathy, the ability to sense and sometimes share others' feelings. This capacity creates powerful connection, but can also lead to empathic distress if not properly managed. Highly empathic people often absorb others' emotional states, which provides valuable information, but can become overwhelming without proper boundaries. Sarah, a healthcare executive with exceptional emotional empathy, found herself emotionally exhausted after difficult meetings. We developed a visualization practice where she imagined an invisible boundary, permeable enough to sense others' emotions, but substantial enough to prevent complete absorption. This simple technique allowed her to maintain her empathic gifts without the personal cost that had previously accompanied them. The third type is empathic concern, the motivation to help based on understanding others' needs. This moves beyond simply understanding or feeling to actually responding in supportive ways. Interestingly, research shows that empathic concern can remain high even when emotional empathy is moderated, explaining how effective emergency responders can remain caring while not becoming emotionally overwhelmed. Each type of empathy can be deliberately developed through specific practices. For cognitive empathy, regularly exposing yourself to diverse perspectives through reading, conversation, or media from different viewpoints expands your empathic range. For emotional empathy, practices that increase body awareness and emotional literacy enhance your ability to detect subtle feelings. For empathic concern, linking understanding to action creates neural pathways that strengthen this response. Your empathic accuracy, how correctly you identify others' emotions and perspectives, improves with deliberate practice. This isn't about making assumptions, but rather developing hypotheses and verifying them through observation and appropriate questions. As with any skill, improved performance comes from feedback and adjustment over time. The most common challenge with empathy development isn't capability but avoidance. Many people unconsciously resist empathizing with certain emotions or individuals because it triggers their own discomfort. Recognizing these empathic blocks is crucial for development. Do you find yourself intellectualizing when faced with others' strong emotions? Do you offer solutions before fully understanding the experience? Do you change the subject when conversations become emotionally charged? These are common empathic avoidance patterns. Expanding your empathic range means developing comfort with the full spectrum of human emotion, not just pleasant or familiar feelings, but also rage, despair, shame, and other challenging states. This doesn't mean you endorse or agree with all emotional expressions, just that you can stay present with them without immediate withdrawal. The combination of deep listening and genuine empathy creates the foundation for what might be the most valuable asset in any relationship. Trust. Trust is often discussed as if it were a single quality, but research reveals it's actually a complex equation with multiple variables that can be independently strengthened. The trust equation, developed by trusted advisor associates, defines trust as a combination of credibility, the belief that you know what you're talking about; reliability, the belief that you'll do what you say; intimacy, the sense of emotional safety with you, all divided by self-orientation, the degree to which you seem focused on yourself versus others. This formula explains why technically brilliant people can still struggle with trust if they have low emotional intelligence or high self-focus. Building trust requires attention to all variables. Credibility comes from demonstrated knowledge and honesty about its limits. Reliability develops through consistent follow-through on commitments, large and small. Intimacy grows through appropriate vulnerability and respectful handling of others' disclosures. Self-orientation decreases through genuine curiosity and service-focused attention. I worked with an IT consulting firm whose technical expertise was unquestionable, but whose client relationships were frequently strained. Assessment revealed that while their credibility was excellent, they struggled with reliability, missed deadlines and poor communication, and intimacy. Impersonal interactions focused solely on technical matters. By strengthening these dimensions, they transformed their client relationships without changing anything about their technical approach. Understanding this equation also explains why certain behaviors destroy trust so rapidly. When someone lies, damaging credibility, repeatedly fails to follow through, undermining reliability, violates confidences, breaking intimacy, or reveals selfish motives. Demonstrating high self-orientation, they're not just making isolated mistakes, they're poisoning the fundamental equation that creates trust. The process of rebuilding broken trust follows predictable stages that can't be rushed or circumvented. It begins with acknowledgement, genuine recognition of the specific trust-breaking behavior and its impact. This must be followed by sincere apology, without excuses or justifications. Then comes the commitment to change, which gains credibility only through consistent evidence of new behavior over time. Finally, patience is required as the person who experienced the breach tests the new pattern to ensure its reliability. Many trust repair attempts fail because people try to skip directly to moving on without building the necessary foundation through these steps. Understanding the psychology of trust allows you to approach both trust building and trust repair systematically rather than hoping for the best. Creating psychological safety, the belief that one can speak up, take risks, and be vulnerable without fear of punishment or humiliation, lies at the heart of all meaningful connection. Google's extensive Project Aristotle research identified this quality as the primary predictor of team effectiveness, more important than individual talent, clear goals, or even meaningful incentives. You create psychological safety through consistent behaviors that demonstrate acceptance and value, acknowledging others' contributions, showing appreciation for different viewpoints, admitting your own mistakes openly, and responding to vulnerability with respect, rather than judgment. These behaviors aren't complicated, but they must be consistent to create the safety that allows authentic connection. When psychological safety exists, people bring their full selves to interactions. They share ideas without filtering, offer creative solutions without fear, and collaborate without defensive positioning. The resulting synergy creates possibilities that simply don't exist in safety-deficient environments. All of these elements, first impressions, deep listening, empathy, trust, and psychological safety, contribute to what we often call charisma, though this quality is widely misunderstood. Contrary to popular belief, charisma isn't an inborn trait limited to a lucky few. It's a learnable set of behaviors that create a particular response in others. The most pervasive myth about charisma is that it requires extroversion, dominance, or natural social ease. Research by Olivia Fox-Cabane and others reveals that charisma actually emerges from specific behaviors accessible to all personality types. Introvert charisma, for instance, often manifests as intense presence and deep listening rather than energetic expression, yet creates equally powerful connection. True charisma emerges from the balance of two fundamental qualities, warmth and competence. Warmth without competence creates likability without impact. Competence without warmth creates respect without trust. The combination creates magnetic influence that motivates others to both listen and follow. Different situations call for different charisma styles. Leadership charisma emphasizes vision and inspiration. Focus charisma creates intense personal connection. Authority charisma establishes credibility and confidence. Kindness charisma generates goodwill and trust. The most effective communicators can flex between these styles based on context while maintaining authentic expression. I worked with Sophia, a brilliant data scientist promoted to lead a high-profile project. Despite her technical brilliance, team morale and productivity plummeted under her leadership. The issue wasn't competence, her expertise was unquestionable, but a complete absence of expressed warmth. Her natural analytical style, effective for technical work, created psychological disconnect when leading others. Through specific practices, Sophia developed greater presence and expressiveness without changing her fundamentally introverted personality. She learned to explicitly acknowledge others' contributions, show genuine curiosity about their perspectives, and express appreciation in ways meaningful to different team members. These simple behaviors transformed her leadership effectiveness, not by making her someone else, but by allowing her authentic qualities to be more fully perceived. The most powerful charisma development comes not from adopting external techniques, but from removing internal barriers to authentic expression. When you're caught in self-consciousness, judgment, or insecurity, your natural charisma can't emerge. Practices that reduce these internal obstacles, mindfulness training, self-compassion exercises, or cognitive reframing, often produce more significant charisma enhancement than behavior-focused approaches. Daily practices can systematically enhance your natural charisma. Presence exercises develop your ability to remain fully engaged despite distractions. Power practices build your sense of personal capability, reducing insecurity that blocks authentic expression. Warmth cultivation strengthens your genuine connection to others' well-being, enhancing both the reality and perception of your care. Throughout this exploration of connection psychology, a fundamental truth emerges. Genuine connection isn't created through tactics or techniques, but through authentic presence and understanding. The skills we've discussed, deep listening, empathy, trust building, creating psychological safety, and developing charisma, aren't manipulative tools but capabilities that allow for more genuine human interaction. This understanding transforms how we approach relationship challenges. Rather than seeing difficult conversations, conflicts, or differences as problems to overcome, we recognize them as opportunities to deepen understanding and strengthen connection. Rather than trying to control others' responses, we focus on creating conditions where authentic engagement can flourish. The psychology of connection reveals that what we most desire in relationships, to be seen, understood, valued, and accepted, is also what creates the strongest bonds. By developing your capacity to provide these experiences for others, you simultaneously fulfill your own deepest relational needs. This reciprocity lies at the heart of all meaningful human connection. As we conclude this exploration of connection psychology, remember that these principles apply across all relationship contexts, from intimate partnerships to professional collaborations, from family dynamics to community engagement. The fundamental human needs for recognition, understanding, trust, and belonging transcend specific relationships, though their expression may vary. In our next section, we'll build on these psychological insights to address specific social challenges, navigating difficult conversations, dealing with challenging people, mastering persuasion, resolving conflicts, and maintaining connection in the digital age. With the foundation of understanding we've established, these practical applications will have context that makes them not just effective but meaningful. The invisible architecture of human connection is becoming visible to you. The patterns that create or destroy trust, the dynamics that generate or undermine rapport, the processes that build or erode psychological safety, all are moving from mystery to clarity. And with this clarity comes not just greater effectiveness, but deeper appreciation for the beautiful complexity of human relationships. Your journey continues from understanding to application, from insight to impact, from knowledge to transformation. The psychology of connection isn't just something to comprehend, it's something to embody. As these principles become integrated into your awareness and behavior, your social world will transform in ways both subtle and profound. Connection that once seemed elusive becomes natural. Influence that once required effort flows organically, and the invisible conversation beneath the surface of every interaction becomes not just visible but navigable. Now that we've explored the psychology of connection, let's turn our attention to perhaps the most valuable application of social intelligence, navigating the challenging interactions that can make or break our relationships, careers, and personal well-being. Have you ever left a difficult conversation feeling worse than when you started, or avoided an important discussion altogether because you feared the outcome? You're not alone. Studies show that the average person spends about 2.8 hours per week dealing with conflict, and most rate these interactions as the most stressful part of their professional and personal lives. What if you could transform these dreaded moments into opportunities for deeper connection and meaningful resolution? What if the very conversations you now avoid could become sources of insight, growth, and strengthened relationships? Difficult conversations aren't fundamentally different from other interactions. They simply amplify the importance of the social intelligence principles we've already discussed. When emotional stakes rise, social awareness becomes even more critical. When positions seem opposed, empathic listening becomes not just helpful, but essential. When conflict emerges, trust moves from a nice-to-have to an absolute necessity. Let's start with the cornerstone skill for navigating social challenges: mastering difficult conversations. Whether delivering tough feedback, addressing a sensitive personal issue, negotiating important differences, or confronting problematic behavior, these conversations share common psychological dynamics that can be systematically addressed. The first key insight is that most difficult conversations actually contain three separate conversations happening simultaneously: the what happened conversation, facts, interpretations, and blame; the feelings conversation, emotions triggered in both parties; and the identity conversation, what this situation means about who you are. Failure to recognize and address all three dimensions is why so many challenging interactions go sideways despite good intentions. Consider a situation where you need to address a team member's consistently late project deliveries. The what happened dimension involves concrete facts about deadlines and deliverables. The feelings dimension might include your frustration and concern alongside their possible embarrassment or defensiveness. The identity dimension could trigger your worries about being an ineffective leader alongside their fears about professional competence. Successfully navigating this conversation requires preparation in all three dimensions. Beyond gathering factual evidence, you need to recognize and manage your emotional triggers while creating space for theirs. You also need to separate substantive issues from identity threats, helping both of you engage with the problem without feeling your core self is under attack. I worked with Elena, a senior marketing executive who avoided confrontation at all costs, allowing performance issues to fester until they became crises. By recognizing that her avoidance stemmed from an identity fear, so hereby create conflict, I'm a bad person, she was able to reframe difficult conversations as acts of care rather than confrontation. This single shift transformed her leadership effectiveness and team dynamics. Preparing for emotionally charged interactions requires more than just planning your opening statement. It means developing mental and emotional readiness for multiple possible responses. When someone reacts with anger, defensiveness, or withdrawal, all common responses to perceived threat, your own emotional regulation becomes critical. If their reaction triggers your fight, flight, freeze response, the conversation immediately deteriorates. A powerful preparation technique is the if-then emotional planning model. Rather than hoping for the best, you systematically consider challenging responses and prepare your centered reaction. If they become defensive, then I will maintain calm curiosity rather than escalating. If they try to change the subject, then I will gently redirect without becoming frustrated. This advanced planning helps your prefrontal cortex stay engaged rather than letting your amygdala hijack the interaction. The language patterns you use in difficult conversations dramatically impact outcomes. Absolute terms like always, never, and every time trigger defensiveness and are rarely factually accurate. Accusatory you statements, you missed the deadline again, create threat responses, while ownership I statements. I'm concerned about the missed deadline, reduce defensiveness while maintaining clarity. Powerful framing can transform the entire emotional context of a challenging conversation. Compare, we need to talk about your performance problems with I'd like to discuss how we can set you up for greater success. Both address the same issue, but the second framing creates collaborative engagement rather than defensive self-protection. Diffusing tension and hostility during difficult conversations requires presence and skill rather than retreat or escalation. The counterintuitive first step is to move toward the emotion rather than away from it. Acknowledging someone's anger, frustration, or hurt without judgment often immediately reduces its intensity. I can see you're really frustrated right now, and that makes sense, given your perspective. This acknowledgement isn't agreement with their position. It's recognition of their emotional reality. The simple act of validation often creates enough safety for constructive dialogue to resume. Trying to logic someone out of an emotion, by contrast, typically intensifies their feeling while damaging rapport. Delivering tough feedback effectively requires balancing honesty with care, a combination that creates psychological safety even in challenging moments. Research shows that feedback is most likely to be received constructively when it comes from a foundation of demonstrated goodwill. People accept difficult truths from those they believe have their best interests at heart. The feedback model I've found most effective combines clarity, specificity, impact, and partnership. Rather than vague criticisms, effective feedback describes specific behaviors, their concrete impact, and a collaborative path forward. Compare your reports need improvement with when financial projections are submitted without supporting calculations. The review team has to recreate them, adding 3 days to the approval process. How could we streamline this? Finding win-win resolutions to difficult situations starts with shifting from positions what someone wants to interests, why they want it. Most conflicts involve compatible interests hidden beneath seemingly opposed positions. By exploring the needs, concerns, and objectives beneath stated positions, previously invisible solutions often emerge. I facilitated a seemingly deadlocked negotiation between manufacturing and quality assurance teams in a medical device company. Manufacturing insisted on streamlined processes while quality demanded additional inspection points. The breakthrough came when we identified their shared interests. Both wanted to prevent expensive rework and ensure product safety. This common ground led to an innovative solution involving targeted risk-based inspections that satisfied both teams' core needs. Beyond specific conversations lie the broader challenge of dealing with difficult people, those individuals whose patterns consistently create stress, conflict, or dysfunction. While we can't control others' behavior, understanding the psychology behind challenging patterns allows us to respond more effectively while protecting our own well-being. The first key insight is that difficult behavior rarely appears uniformly across all situations. Even the most challenging people typically behave differently in different contexts. This contextual variation provides valuable information about the triggers and functions of their problematic patterns. The controlling micromanager may become hands-off in areas outside their expertise. The passive-aggressive team member might be directly confrontational on issues they feel passionate about. The chronic complainer often becomes solution-focused when discussing certain topics. These exceptions reveal that difficult behavior is situational rather than innate, responding to specific psychological triggers rather than representing fixed personality traits. Identifying these triggers helps you develop targeted strategies rather than global responses. Instead of labeling someone as simply difficult, you can recognize specific patterns and their activating conditions. This shift from person-based to pattern-based thinking dramatically improves your response effectiveness while reducing your emotional reactivity. Different challenging patterns require different strategic responses. With highly analytical personalities who dismiss emotional concerns, creating bridges through data and logical frameworks typically works better than pushing for emotional expression. With highly emotional people who seem resistant to logical arguments, acknowledging feelings first creates receptivity to rational considerations. I coached Marianne, a nonprofit director struggling with a board member whose constant questioning derailed every meeting. Rather than seeing him as obstinate, we identified that his behavior stemmed from a deep need for thoroughness and risk prevention that was triggered by feeling rushed. By providing detailed pre-meeting materials and explicitly allocating time for his concerns, Marianne transformed their relationship without changing his underlying personality. Managing manipulators, energy vampires, and toxic individuals requires a different approach centered on strong boundaries. These patterns often involve emotional exploitation, using guilt, blame, victimhood, or aggression to control others' behavior. Responding effectively means recognizing these dynamics without becoming emotionally entangled in them. The core skill for handling manipulative behavior is maintaining emotional distance while remaining engaged. This means acknowledging the content of their communication without absorbing the emotional hooks designed to trigger your guilt, fear, or responsibility. Phrases like, "I understand that's your perspective," acknowledge without agreement, while clear statements of boundaries define what you will and won't do. Setting boundaries without burning bridges requires clarity, consistency, and calm delivery. Effective boundaries focus on your own actions rather than demanding specific behavior from others. I'm willing to discuss solutions, but not continue analyzing who's at fault, rather than stop blaming others. This approach protects your well-being while maintaining professional effectiveness. Transforming adversaries into allies begins with a fundamental mindset shift, from seeing difficult people as obstacles to viewing them as individuals with unmet needs, fears, and goals. This perspective doesn't excuse problematic behavior, but creates pathways for influence that antagonistic positioning prevents. The strategic use of thoughtful questions can transform seemingly adversarial relationships. What would success look like for you in this situation? What concerns you most about the current approach? What would need to happen for you to feel comfortable with this direction? These questions demonstrate respect for their perspective, while gathering information crucial for finding common ground. I witnessed this transformation while consulting with two department heads locked in a bitter turf war that was damaging their organization. Rather than forcing cooperation, I facilitated a structured conversation exploring each leader's core concerns, priorities, and definitions of success. The breakthrough came when they discovered their conflict stemmed not from fundamentally opposed goals, but from different approaches to shared objectives. This recognition shifted their relationship from competition to collaboration. The psychology of persuasion offers another powerful set of tools for navigating social challenges, not through manipulation, but through understanding how human decision-making actually works. Whether convincing a skeptical team to try a new approach, helping a loved one consider an important change, or building support for your ideas, persuasion principles apply universally. The distinction between ethical influence and manipulation lies in three key elements: truth, transparency, and benefit. Ethical persuasion involves truthful information presented with transparent intent that benefits all parties. Manipulation employs deception, hidden agendas, or one-sided benefit. The socially intelligent person develops powerful influence skills while maintaining ethical standards. Robert Cialdini's landmark research identifies 6 universal principles of persuasion that operate across cultures and contexts. Understanding these principles allows you to incorporate them ethically while recognizing when they're being used manipulatively against you. The reciprocity principle explains why small initial favors significantly increase compliance with later requests. The consistency principle reveals why getting small commitments creates momentum for larger agreements. The social proof principle clarifies why highlighting what others are doing powerfully shapes behavior. The authority principle demonstrates why credible expertise dramatically enhances influence. The liking principle confirms why genuine connection increases persuasive impact. And the scarcity principle explains why limited opportunities motivate action more than abundant ones. These principles aren't tricks or gimmicks. They're fundamental aspects of human psychology that operate whether we acknowledge them or not. The socially intelligent approach isn't to ignore these realities, but to incorporate them ethically while ensuring substantive value underlies all persuasive efforts. Framing techniques that change perception represent another powerful persuasion element. The same information presented differently creates dramatically different responses. Compare this approach has a 20% failure rate with this approach has an 80% success rate. Identical information that creates vastly different emotional reactions. Or consider how reframing cost as investment shifts perception from loss to opportunity. Effective framing isn't manipulation, it's recognizing that multiple perspectives on the same reality always exist. By thoughtfully choosing frames that align with your audience's values and highlight genuine benefits, you increase the likelihood that valid ideas receive fair consideration. Creating buy-in instead of resistance requires understanding a fundamental psychological principle. People support what they help create. Top-down directives, regardless of merit, typically generate resistance simply because they trigger feelings of imposition rather than choice. The alternative isn't abandoning leadership, but creating authentic involvement in shaping solutions. I consulted with a healthcare system implementing a major electronic records transition that was meeting fierce physician resistance despite obvious benefits. The breakthrough came when administration shifted from selling a completed solution to engaging physicians in refining implementation. This authentic involvement transformed critics into champions, not because the system fundamentally changed, but because psychological ownership replaced imposed compliance. Even with excellent communication and influence skills, conflict will inevitably arise in any meaningful relationship or endeavor. Conflict resolution mastery might be the single most valuable social intelligence skill, given its impact on both effectiveness and well-being. Understanding conflict styles and their strengths represents the first step toward resolution mastery. Research identifies 5 primary conflict approaches: competing, assertive and uncooperative; accommodating, cooperative and unassertive; avoiding, unassertive and uncooperative; collaborating, assertive and cooperative; and compromising, moderately assertive and cooperative. Each style has potential value in specific contexts. Competing may be appropriate in emergencies requiring quick decisions. Accommodating works well for issues more important to others than yourself. Avoiding might be strategic for truly low-priority conflicts. Collaborating creates sustainable solutions for high-stakes issues. Compromising offers efficiency when perfect solutions aren't necessary. Problems arise not from having a preferred style, but from applying it inflexibly across all situations. Social intelligence means developing range across these approaches and selecting them strategically based on context, rather than defaulting to habitual patterns. The most effective conflict navigators can access any style when appropriate, while generally preferring collaboration for important issues. Moving from positions to interests transforms seemingly intractable conflicts into solvable problems. Positions, the specific outcomes people demand, often appear mutually exclusive. Interests, the underlying needs, concerns and motivations, typically offer multiple satisfaction paths. The simple question, "Why is that important to you?" often reveals compatible interests beneath opposing positions. I mediated a bitter divorce negotiation where both parents demanded primary physical custody of their children, creating an apparently irreconcilable conflict. Exploration revealed different underlying interests. One parent primarily concerned with maintaining the children's school and social connections, the other focused on daily involvement in their lives. This clarity allowed a creative solution involving shared housing near the school that satisfied both parents' core interests, despite their initially opposed positions. Techniques for de-escalation become crucial when emotions threaten productive dialogue. The amygdala hijack, when our threat response system overrides rational thinking, represents the primary barrier to resolution in most conflicts. Recognizing and addressing emotional flooding creates space for constructive engagement. Physiological interventions often work best for immediate de-escalation. The simple act of taking 6 deep diaphragmatic breaths reactivates the parasympathetic nervous system, counteracting the fight-flight response. Brief breaks, even just minutes long, allow stress hormones to dissipate. Staying physically grounded, literally feeling your feet on the floor and practicing present moment awareness, helps maintain access to your higher cognitive functions. Linguistic de-escalation techniques complement these physiological approaches. Acknowledging emotions without judgment creates safety. I can see this is really important to you. Using inclusive language builds partnership. Let's figure this out together, rather than "you need to understand." Conditional retrospective language reduces defensiveness. It might have been helpful if I had explained my reasoning earlier, rather than "you should have asked questions." Finding common ground in seemingly impossible situations begins with identifying shared reality, facts, goals, or values. Both parties can acknowledge despite their differences. This foundation, however small initially, creates a nucleus for expanding agreement. Even adversaries usually share some common ground, perhaps regard for certain values, concern for specific individuals, or desire for sustainable solutions. I facilitated reconciliation between estranged family members who hadn't spoken in years following a bitter business dispute. The breakthrough began with identifying something undeniably shared: love for a child who missed the relationship between her parent and grandparent. This emotional common ground, though unrelated to their original conflict, created enough connection to begin addressing deeper issues. The digital age presents unique social intelligence challenges. How do we maintain authentic connection through screens? How do we interpret communication without access to the nonverbal cues that comprise most of its meaning? How do we build trust remotely when our brains evolved to assess trustworthiness through in-person interaction? Maintaining connection in remote interactions requires deliberately compensating for missing communication channels. In person, we constantly receive feedback through facial expressions, body language, and energetic presence. In digital environments, these signals are either absent or significantly diminished, creating both information deficit and psychological distance. Overcoming these limitations begins with recognizing that digital communication requires more explicit expression than in-person interaction. The subtle nod, warm smile, or engaged posture that naturally signals receptivity in person must be replaced with deliberate verbal and visual cues in digital contexts. This isn't artificial, it's making explicit what would naturally be implicit in shared physical space. Digital body language follows identifiable patterns that can be deliberately employed and accurately interpreted. Response time, message length, punctuation choices, emoji usage, and formal elements like greetings and closings all convey meaning in digital communication. Understanding these patterns helps you both express yourself clearly and correctly interpret others' intended meaning. For example, in most professional contexts, a rapid response with minimal wording and no greeting suggests urgency or irritation, regardless of content. A delayed but thorough response generally indicates thoughtful consideration rather than disinterest. Periods after short statements, "You are fine," typically signal finality or seriousness, while the same word without punctuation, "You are fine," suggests casual acknowledgement. These patterns aren't universal or absolute, but recognizing them improves digital communication accuracy. Building trust through screens requires deliberately creating experiences that generate the psychological states associated with trust development. In person, trust often builds through informal moments, shared experiences, and nonverbal consistency. In digital environments, these elements must be consciously incorporated rather than occurring naturally. Creating dedicated connection time, even brief check-ins focused on personal sharing rather than task discussion, helps develop the psychological safety required for trust. Maintaining predictable communication patterns builds reliability perception. Demonstrating vulnerability in appropriate ways creates intimacy, and explicitly focusing on others' needs and concerns reduces perceived self-orientation. I helped transform a dysfunctional remote team by instituting a simple practice, beginning each meeting with a genuine moment of connection, where each person briefly shared something currently meaningful in their work or life. This small ritual dramatically improves team cohesion and performance by creating the emotional connection that would have happened naturally in a shared office through casual interaction. Avoiding common pitfalls of digital communication requires awareness of its unique psychological challenges. The absence of immediate feedback often creates message ambiguity, leading receivers to project negative interpretations onto neutral communications. The perceived performance aspect of video calls creates cognitive load absent in natural conversation. The permanent nature of written messages elevates perfection pressure and documentation concerns. Addressing these challenges involves both technical approaches and psychological adjustments. Clearly stating intent and tone in ambiguous messages prevents misinterpretation. Creating psychologically safe spaces for video interaction reduces performance anxiety. Establishing appropriate documentation norms clarifies when messages constitute formal agreements versus exploratory discussions. The overarching principle for digital social intelligence is intentionality, deliberately creating conditions for connection rather than assuming they'll emerge naturally as in physical interaction. This doesn't mean manufacturing artificial experiences, but rather consciously facilitating the psychological elements that physical presence provides automatically. As we navigate these social challenges, difficult conversations, challenging people, persuasion dynamics, conflict resolution, and digital interaction, a common theme emerges: the most effective approaches combine psychological understanding with practical skills. Neither theoretical knowledge nor tactical techniques alone create mastery. The integration of deep human insight with specific behavioral capabilities produces the social intelligence needed for these challenging contexts. This integration manifests differently across personality styles and cultural contexts. The socially intelligent introvert navigates conflict differently than the socially intelligent extrovert, though both can be equally effective. The socially intelligent person from a collectivist culture approaches persuasion differently than someone from an individualist background, though both can be equally ethical and impactful. The beauty of social intelligence lies not in conformity to a single approach, but in developing authenticity and effectiveness simultaneously. Your unique social fingerprint, the distinctive way you express connection, handle challenges, and navigate relationships, becomes more defined and impactful rather than being replaced by generic techniques. As we prepare to explore the transformation journey in our final section, remember that navigating social challenges effectively isn't just about getting what you want or avoiding discomfort. It's about creating conditions where genuine understanding can flourish despite differences. It's about maintaining connection even through conflict. It's about building relationships strong enough to withstand inevitable tensions and disagreements. The socially intelligent person doesn't seek to eliminate all challenges, an impossible and undesirable goal, but rather to approach them with understanding, skill, and authentic presence. Each difficult conversation navigated, each challenging relationship improved, each conflict productively resolved strengthens your capabilities for the next challenge. This growth spiral transforms social challenges from dreaded experiences to valuable opportunities for connection and development. The path forward builds on everything we've explored: the awakening to social intelligence's importance, the foundations of social mastery, the psychology of connection, and now the navigation of social challenges. Our final section will translate these insights into practical transformation, specific practices, measurements, and approaches to systematically develop your social intelligence while integrating it authentically into your unique personal expression. The journey continues from understanding to application, from knowledge to embodiment, from isolated skills to integrated mastery. The invisible architecture of social intelligence is becoming increasingly visible and navigable. The patterns that once seemed mysterious now reveal their underlying structure, and the path forward becomes not a matter of chance, but of deliberate, informed development toward your highest social potential. We've explored the awakening to social intelligence, built strong foundations, uncovered the psychology of connection, and learned to navigate social challenges. Now comes the most important question: how do you transform this knowledge into lived experience? How do you move from understanding social intelligence to embodying it in your daily interactions? What would your life look like 1 year from today if you committed to deliberate social intelligence practice? How would your relationships transform? What professional opportunities might open? What internal shifts in confidence and ease might you experience? True transformation isn't about quick fixes or surface-level techniques. It's about systematic development that integrates new awareness and capabilities into your authentic self-expression. The path I'm about to share has helped thousands of people across diverse personalities, backgrounds, and starting points. It's not about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming more fully who you are, with expanded social capabilities that amplify your natural strengths. The 30-day Social Intelligence Challenge provides the ideal starting structure, long enough to create meaningful change, short enough to maintain focus and momentum. Each week builds on the previous one, systematically developing the 4 pillars of social intelligence we explored earlier: self-awareness, social awareness, relationship management, and influence. The journey begins with self-awareness practices that create the essential foundation. For the first 7 days, you'll focus on developing greater awareness of your own emotional patterns, communication tendencies, and social triggers. Without this foundation, attempts to develop other social skills often create artificial techniques rather than authentic capabilities. The cornerstone practice during this phase is the emotion tracking journal. 3 times daily, morning, midday, and evening, you'll pause for just 60 seconds to note your current emotional state, physical sensations, thoughts, and behavioral tendencies. This simple practice dramatically increases your awareness of emotional patterns that drive social behavior. Sarah, a marketing executive with a reputation for being intimidating, discovered through this practice that she experienced anxiety before most meetings, which she unconsciously masked with assertive, rapid communication. This single awareness allowed her to develop a brief centering practice before interactions, transforming her leadership presence without artificial behavioral techniques. The second essential practice during this phase is communication pattern identification. You'll record 3 recent interactions, one that went exceptionally well, one that was typical, and one that went poorly. For each, you'll analyze your communication patterns. How did you listen? What questions did you ask? How did you respond to different conversational cues? This analysis reveals your natural strengths and blind spots. Michael, a technical professional struggling with client relationships, discovered through this exercise that he consistently interrupted clients to correct inaccuracies, missing their underlying concerns. This awareness alone, without complex techniques, allowed him to make a simple shift in his approach that dramatically improved client satisfaction. The third practice involves identifying your social triggers, the specific situations, behaviors, or personalities that consistently create reactive responses. These triggers, often operating beneath conscious awareness, can hijack even the most developed social skills in key moments. Recognizing them is the first step to managing them effectively. James, a normally composed leader, identified through this exercise that he became defensive whenever his timeline estimates were questioned, a reaction stemming from early career experiences where his competence was doubted. Simply naming this trigger allowed him to recognize the reaction when it appeared and respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. Week 2 shifts focus to social awareness experiments that expand your perception of dynamics typically missed in everyday interaction. These structured practices develop your ability to read emotional subtexts, interpret nonverbal signals, and understand group dynamics that shape social outcomes. The first experiment, the observation practice, involves spending 15 minutes in a public setting, cafe, park, office, common area, solely focused on observing social dynamics without participation. You'll note nonverbal patterns, emotional expressions, relationship dynamics, and status signals. This detached observation builds your pattern recognition capabilities without the pressure of participation. The empathy mapping exercise builds on this foundation. In 3 different interactions, you'll deliberately focus on understanding the other person's experience rather than advancing your own agenda. Using simple prompts, what might they be thinking but not saying? Emotions might they be experiencing? What needs might be driving their behavior? You develop deeper insight into others' internal landscapes. Elena, a sales professional, discovered through this practice that she had been focusing entirely on presenting product benefits while missing her clients' unexpressed concerns about implementation challenges. By shifting attention to these underlying worries, she was able to address them proactively, significantly improving her conversion rate. The perspective-taking challenge completes this phase. You'll identify a recent disagreement or conflict, then write a one-page description of the situation from the other person's viewpoint, making their position as reasonable as possible given their information and priorities. This exercise develops cognitive empathy, the ability to understand perspectives different from your own without necessarily agreeing with them. Thomas, a department head locked in ongoing conflict with another leader, experienced a breakthrough when he realized the other manager's seemingly obstructive behavior was actually driven by well-intended concern about risk and quality. This insight transformed their relationship from adversarial to collaborative without either changing their core values. Week 3 focuses on relationship-building initiatives that apply your developing awareness to strengthen connections across different contexts. These practices move beyond perception into active relationship development, creating positive spirals that enhance social bonds. The appreciation practice involves expressing specific, authentic appreciation to 3 different people daily. Unlike generic compliments, these expressions identify specific qualities or actions you genuinely value, their positive impact, and why they matter. This practice not only strengthens relationships, but rewires your attention to notice positive attributes rather than focusing primarily on problems or deficits. The Curiosity Conversation Initiative challenges you to initiate one conversation daily, focused entirely on exploring another person's interests, perspectives, or experiences without sharing your own. Using open questions and reflective listening, you'll develop deeper understanding while creating psychological safety that strengthens connection. Robert, an analytical leader known for his task focus, committed to one curiosity conversation daily with team members. Within 2 weeks, his team reported feeling significantly more valued and understood, leading to increased engagement and initiative without any change in Robert's technical approach to work. The trust-building action involves identifying one relationship where trust has been damaged and taking a specific action to address one component of the trust equation we explored earlier. Demonstrating reliability by following through on a commitment, showing appropriate vulnerability to increase intimacy, focusing explicitly on their needs to reduce perceived self-orientation, or providing valuable information to enhance credibility. Emotions might they be experiencing? What needs might be driving their behavior? You develop deeper insight into others' internal landscapes. Elena, a sales professional, discovered through this practice that she had been focusing entirely on presenting product benefits while missing her clients' unexpressed concerns about implementation challenges. By shifting attention to these underlying worries, she was able to address them proactively, significantly improving her conversion rate. The perspective-taking challenge completes this phase. You'll identify a recent disagreement or conflict, then write a one-page description of the situation from the other person's viewpoint, making their position as reasonable as possible given their information and priorities. This exercise develops cognitive empathy, the ability to understand perspectives different from your own without necessarily agreeing with them. Thomas, a department head locked in ongoing conflict with another leader, experienced a breakthrough when he realized the other manager's seemingly obstructive behavior was actually driven by well-intended concern about risk and quality. This insight transformed their relationship from adversarial to collaborative without either changing their core values. Week 3 focuses on relationship-building initiatives that apply your developing awareness to strengthen connections across different contexts. These practices move beyond perception into active relationship development, creating positive spirals that enhance social bonds. The appreciation practice involves expressing specific, authentic appreciation to 3 different people daily. Unlike generic compliments, these expressions identify specific qualities or actions you genuinely value, their positive impact, and why they matter. This practice not only strengthens relationships, but rewires your attention to notice positive attributes rather than focusing primarily on problems or deficits. The Curiosity Conversation Initiative challenges you to initiate one conversation daily, focused entirely on exploring another person's interests, perspectives, or experiences without sharing your own. Using open questions and reflective listening, you'll develop deeper understanding while creating psychological safety that strengthens connection. Robert, an analytical leader known for his task focus, committed to one curiosity conversation daily with team members. Within 2 weeks, his team reported feeling significantly more valued and understood, leading to increased engagement and initiative without any change in Robert's technical approach to work. The trust-building action involves identifying one relationship where trust has been damaged and taking a specific action to address one component of the trust equation we explored earlier. Demonstrating reliability by following through on a commitment, showing appropriate vulnerability to increase intimacy, focusing explicitly on their needs to reduce perceived self-orientation, or providing valuable information to enhance credibility. Maria restored a damaged client relationship not through elaborate apologies, but through a simple reliability demonstration, creating and adhering to a communication schedule that rebuilt confidence in her follow-through. This targeted approach addressed the specific trust dimension that had been damaged, rather than using generic trust-building approaches. Week 4 culminates with influence and impact challenges that integrate all previous elements into effective social leadership. These practices develop your ability to shape outcomes while maintaining authentic connection and mutual benefit. The framing practice involves identifying an important idea or proposal, then creating 3 different frames for presenting it based on the values and priorities of your audience. You'll develop versions emphasizing security and risk reduction for safety-oriented individuals, innovation and possibility for growth-focused people, and practical results for outcome-centered listeners. This exercise develops your ability to present identical content in ways that resonate with different value systems. Jennifer transformed her team's receptivity to a major process change by presenting the same initiative with 3 different emphases: as a risk reduction measure to more conservative team members, as an innovation opportunity to creative staff, and as an efficiency improvement to practically minded colleagues. The change wasn't manipulated, it genuinely offered all 3 benefits, but highlighting different aspects based on values dramatically improved acceptance. The influence conversation challenges you to prepare and conduct an important, persuasive interaction using ethical influence principles. You'll identify shared interests, incorporate appropriate social proof, establish relevant authority, build on existing commitments, and frame benefits clearly, all while maintaining authentic connection and mutual benefit. The leadership moment practice involves stepping into one situation daily where social leadership is needed but not explicitly requested, mediating a tense interaction, recognizing unacknowledged contributions, facilitating inclusive conversation, addressing unproductive patterns, or creating connection between disconnected individuals. This practice develops your ability to positively shape social environments without formal authority. David, naturally reserved, challenged himself to facilitate more inclusive discussions during team meetings, simply by asking, "What perspectives might we be missing?" And I'd be interested in hearing from those who haven't shared their thoughts yet. These small interventions transform team dynamics and decision quality while developing his social confidence. Throughout this 30-day challenge, daily reflection cements your learning and personalization. Each evening, you'll document key observations, insights, and results, creating a record of your development while reinforcing awareness of patterns and progress. This reflection transforms experiences into learning in a way that mere experience without reflection cannot achieve. How do you know if your social intelligence is actually improving? While subjective perception matters, objective measurement provides crucial feedback that guides development and prevents the common phenomenon of illusory competence, believing your skills have improved more than they actually have. The before and after assessment begins with establishing your baseline using 3 measurement approaches. First, self-assessment using validated social intelligence scales that evaluate your capabilities across different dimensions. Second, focused feedback from 3-5 trusted individuals who interact with you across different contexts, providing specific observations about your social strengths and development areas. Third, objective behavioral tracking of key metrics relevant to your goals, whether conversion rates in sales, team engagement scores in leadership, relationship satisfaction in personal contexts, or other measurable outcomes. Repeating these measurements after your 30-day challenge provides comparative data that reveals actual rather than perceived growth. This objective assessment often reveals surprising insights, areas of significant improvement you hadn't noticed, persistent blind spots despite perceived change, or unexpected growth in dimensions you weren't deliberately targeting. The key metrics for social growth vary based on your specific goals and contexts, but certain indicators consistently reflect developing social intelligence: the quality and depth of information others share with you, the frequency with which you're sought for advice or collaboration, the ease of generating support for your initiatives, the ability to prevent or quickly resolve conflicts, and the psychological safety others feel in your presence. Alexander, a brilliant but abrasive physician, measured his social intelligence development through patient satisfaction scores, referral rates from colleagues, and nurse retention on his service. These objective metrics provided clear feedback on his progress while highlighting specific growth areas more effectively than general impressions could provide. Feedback mechanisms to accelerate learning create the critical link between experience and improvement. Without structured feedback, experience often reinforces existing patterns rather than developing new capabilities. The most effective mechanisms combine self-reflection, trusted observers, and objective data. The learning journal practice creates an ongoing record of social situations, your responses, observed outcomes, and alternative approaches you might try in similar future situations. This simple documentation accelerates pattern recognition and deliberate growth more effectively than experience alone. The feedback partner arrangement establishes a reciprocal relationship with someone committed to your development, who observes your interactions and provides specific, timely observations rather than evaluative judgments. I noticed that when you asked that question, 3 people leaned forward and the energy in the conversation shifted, provides more valuable feedback than you did well in that meeting. Maria and Thomas, colleagues committed to developing their leadership presence, established a simple observation signal they could use during meetings, a small note with a plus sign when they observed particularly effective moments, or a delta symbol indicating potential alternative approaches. This real-time, non-disruptive feedback accelerated their development more rapidly than retrospective discussions alone. Technology-enabled feedback tools provide another acceleration mechanism. Video recording presentations or important conversations with appropriate permission allows you to observe your own patterns with greater objectivity. Voice analysis apps can track patterns like interruption frequency, speaking pace, or filler word usage. Even simple voice memos reflecting immediately after important interactions improve self-awareness more effectively than memory alone. Recognizing and celebrating small wins builds the motivation and momentum essential for sustained development. Social intelligence growth rarely happens in dramatic breakthroughs, but rather through consistent small improvements that compound over time. Acknowledging these incremental gains, the slightly better handling of a difficult conversation, the moment of emotional regulation during stress, the successful connection with a previously challenging personality, reinforces the behaviors and awareness that drive continuing growth. Even as you develop your social capabilities, you will inevitably experience setbacks and challenges. Resilience in social growth requires specific mindsets and practices that transform these difficult moments from discouraging failures into valuable learning opportunities. The first key insight is embracing awkwardness as a sign of growth rather than failure. When you're developing new social capabilities, discomfort and imperfection aren't just normal, they're necessary indicators that you're expanding beyond familiar patterns. The absence of awkwardness likely means you're staying safely within your existing comfort zone rather than genuinely developing. I remind my clients of the language learning analogy. You cannot become fluent in a new language without going through a phase where you speak imperfectly, make grammatical errors, and feel self-conscious about your accent. Social intelligence development follows the same pattern. Temporary awkwardness is the bridge between old limitations and new capabilities. Sophia, naturally reserved and analytical, felt intensely uncomfortable when she began practicing more expressive communication. Her breakthrough came when she reframed this discomfort from "I'm doing this wrong" to "I'm developing new neural pathways that don't yet feel natural." This simple perspective shift allowed her to persist through the awkward phase that previously would have triggered retreat to familiar patterns. Turning social failures into learning opportunities requires a specific reflection practice that bypasses both self-criticism and self-justification. The after-action review, adapted from military learning procedures, asks 4 simple questions. What was the intended outcome? What actually happened? What caused the difference? What can be learned for next time? This structured approach focuses on objective analysis rather than emotional reaction, transforming disappointments into development opportunities. Michael, following a presentation that fell flat despite thorough preparation, used this review process to identify that his content was excellent, but his delivery lacked the energy variation that would have maintained engagement. Rather than concluding, "I'm not good at presenting," or dismissing the audience as unreceptive, he identified a specific skill to develop that improved his effectiveness in subsequent opportunities. The recovery protocol after social missteps provides a systematic approach to repair and growth following inevitable awkward moments, errors in judgment, or communication failures. The 3-step process: acknowledge the situation without over-apologizing, learn from the experience without dwelling on it, and recommit to growth rather than retreat to safety, transforms potentially discouraging moments into stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. Building a growth mindset for social skills requires recognizing that social intelligence isn't a fixed trait, but a developable capability. People with fixed mindsets interpret social difficulties as confirmation of innate limitations. "I'm just not a people person," or "I'm naturally awkward." Those with growth mindsets see the same challenges as development opportunities. I haven't yet learned how to navigate these situations effectively, or this is uncomfortable now, but will become more natural with practice. Research by Carol Dweck and others confirms that these mindsets dramatically influence development trajectory, regardless of starting capability. Those with growth mindsets progress substantially further than equally talented individuals with fixed mindsets, not because of initial advantages, but because they persist through challenges, seek feedback rather than avoiding it, and view setbacks as temporary rather than defining. As your social intelligence develops, you create not just personal benefits, but ripple effects that extend far beyond your immediate interactions. Your social intelligence legacy encompasses the impact your developed capabilities have on relationships, communities, and organizations. Long after individual encounters end, the ripple effect of your social mastery operates through multiple mechanisms. First, direct modeling. As others observe your approach to challenging situations, they consciously or unconsciously adopt elements of your communication patterns, emotional regulation strategies, and conflict resolution approaches. Without deliberate teaching, your embodied social intelligence becomes a living demonstration that influences countless others. Second, environmental transformation. Your consistent application of social intelligence principles gradually shifts the cultural norms in your relationships, teams, and organizations. When you consistently demonstrate respectful listening, others begin listening more attentively. When you skillfully address conflicts rather than avoiding them, others become more willing to engage constructively with differences. Your individual practices become collective patterns that sustain even in your absence. Third, capability development. As your social intelligence allows you to bring out the best in others, you contribute to their growth and effectiveness. By creating psychological safety, you help others access their creativity and insight. By recognizing unacknowledged strengths, you help others develop confidence and capability. Your social intelligence becomes a developmental force that elevates those around you. Creating deep connections that outlast you represents perhaps the most meaningful application of social intelligence. Beyond tactical outcomes or immediate effectiveness, the relationships you build create lasting impact through the trust, understanding, and genuine care they embody. These connections become sources of ongoing support, collaboration, and meaning that transcend individual interactions. Mentoring others in their social development extends your impact across generations. As you share not just what to do, but why it works, the underlying principles rather than merely surface techniques, you equip others to develop contextually appropriate approaches rather than simply mimicking your methods. This principle-based transmission creates adaptable wisdom rather than rigid formulas, allowing your impact to extend into environments and challenges you'll never directly encounter. Your contribution to a more emotionally intelligent world might seem like a lofty aspiration, but it's grounded in practical reality. Each interaction where you demonstrate understanding rather than judgment, curiosity rather than assumption, or compassion rather than criticism creates a micro-shift in social patterns. These small moments, multiplied across countless interactions and amplified through others' experiences, genuinely contribute to a more emotionally intelligent collective environment. The social intelligence journey doesn't end with mastering specific skills or techniques. It's an ongoing process of deepening awareness, expanding capabilities, and refining authentic expression. The most advanced practitioners recognize that mastery isn't a destination, but a continuing journey of integration and application. Social intelligence as a lifelong practice requires maintaining beginner's mind, the willingness to question assumptions, remain curious about new insights, and recognize that even extensive experience doesn't guarantee complete understanding. The social world constantly evolves, presenting new challenges and opportunities that reward continued learning rather than rigid application of established approaches. Advanced challenges for continued growth might include expanding your effectiveness across increasingly diverse personalities, cultures, and contexts, developing greater range in your emotional and behavioral repertoire, increasing your capacity to maintain social effectiveness under intensifying pressure, or applying your capabilities to more complex multi-party dynamics or systemic challenges. The integration of all skills into authentic living represents the highest expression of social intelligence, where techniques and awareness blend seamlessly into natural presence. At this level, you're no longer consciously implementing approaches or managing impressions. You're simply being fully present with others in ways that naturally create connection, understanding, and positive impact. This integration emerges from consistent practice that eventually transforms conscious competence, performing effectively through deliberate attention, into unconscious competence, performing effectively as a natural expression of your developed capabilities. The socially intelligent behaviors that initially required focused effort gradually become your default response patterns, available even in challenging or stressful situations. Your personal invitation to transformation begins now, not with revolutionary change, but with the first small step on a journey that will progressively enhance every aspect of your life. Whether you adopt the structured 30-day challenge I've outlined or create your own development path, the essential elements remain consistent: expanded awareness, deliberate practice, objective feedback, resilient persistence, and authentic integration. The question isn't whether you can develop these capabilities. The evidence for social intelligence development across diverse personalities, backgrounds, and starting points is overwhelming. The real question is whether you'll commit to the process that transforms intellectual understanding into lived experience. Imagine for a moment how your life might differ 1 year from today if you committed to this journey. How might your professional opportunities expand as you more effectively build trust, collaborate across differences, and influence positive outcomes? How might your personal relationships deepen as you create greater understanding, navigate conflicts constructively, and consistently bring out the best in those you care about? How might your internal experience shift as social situations that once created anxiety instead become opportunities for meaningful connection? Social intelligence development offers perhaps the highest return on investment of any capability you can cultivate. Unlike technical skills that apply in limited contexts or may become obsolete, social intelligence enhances every area of life and becomes more valuable as environments grow more complex and interconnected. The same capabilities that improve your effectiveness at work, strengthen your personal relationships, enhance your community impact, and contribute to your overall well-being. The journey from social blindness to social vision, from disconnection to authentic engagement, from limitation to possibility begins with a single step: the decision to see what you've been missing and develop capabilities you've always possessed but never fully activated. That step is available to you right now, not as a distant aspiration, but as an immediate possibility. My own journey began with that painful moment of recognition at a networking event, the realization that despite my technical capabilities, I was socially blind in ways that limited everything I hoped to achieve. That moment of uncomfortable truth became the catalyst for transformation that has enhanced every dimension of my life and work. The same possibility awaits you, not through magical techniques or manipulative tactics, but through the deliberate development of your natural human capacity for connection, understanding, and positive influence. The invisible conversation happening all around you is about to become visible. The patterns that create or destroy trust, the dynamics that generate or undermine rapport, the principles that build or erode relationships, all are moving from mystery to clarity, from challenge to opportunity. The journey to social intelligence isn't about becoming someone new, it's about becoming more fully who you already are, with expanded awareness and capabilities that allow your authentic self to create the impact and connections you desire. Your transformation begins now. The next moment of interaction, whether casual conversation, important meeting, challenging conflict, or meaningful connection, becomes an opportunity to apply what you've learned, to see what you previously missed, to respond with greater awareness and effectiveness than before. Each such moment, approached with intention and awareness, becomes another step on the journey from social limitation to social mastery, from disconnection to meaningful engagement, from missed opportunities to fulfilled potential. The journey continues, one interaction at a time, one insight building upon another, one capability strengthening the next. And with each step, your world expands, more visible, more navigable, more filled with possibilities for connection and impact than you previously imagined possible. This is the promise and the reality of social intelligence, not as abstract concept, but as lived experience that transforms your relationship with yourself, with others, and with the world around you.